Well, greetings, friends, and welcome to the Gospel Underground podcast. This is episode 177. More thoughts, even more thoughts on AI, artificial intelligence. We are broadcasting live, live for us from our worldwide headquarters here in Blacksburg, Virginia. Yes, this is a solo episode. We have been on a podcast hiatus, mainly summertime, vacations, travel, kids moving in and out of homes and colleges have kind of made it very difficult to get together, but we are back, or at least I'm back. Jesse will be back in a few weeks as well. But our podcast, I want to give you a little bit of an update on the state of the Gospel Underground podcast. Obviously, we've been doing this quite a while. This is the 177th episode. We started in August 2017. Man, we went through the pandemic on this joint. And look, this is 8 years. We've been doing this 8 years. Thank you, everyone, for listening in. You undergrounders out there, we are really appreciative, man, of your interaction, your engagement. And when we hear from you that some of the thoughts and musings, the dialogue that we have taking place on the borderlands between the church and culture is helpful to you, both in your growth and living out life and mission on the earth, following Jesus, looking into Jesus, maybe asking questions about faith in God. We're glad you're here. Thank you. We've had our best year ever. I don't pay for detailed analytics on our podcast. We do this thing in-house. We've been publishing it. So we know we have some statistics like how often our podcast gets accessed, which is way more than actual listeners. We know that number was 28 in our first month ever, and we know it's a lot bigger than that. So we have actually thousands of you guys listening in. We're grateful, we're thankful, and we're committed to it. This is a little bit of a passion project for us. We do it as for the love of God, love of ideas, and it's really good for Jesse and my friendships. But we wanted to say thank you. This is our best and biggest year ever. We're not trying to make money off this. If you want to support our ministry, go to the website, gospelunderground.org. We do this based upon friends and partners that allow us to give portions of our time to this, and we're going to continue on this road. Now, just a little update where we're going. We're going to have a few one-off episodes, one today on artificial intelligence again. We're going to have a friend of the ministry, one of our board members of the Gospel Underground, Greg Allison. We're going to talk about his new book called Complementarity, coming up really soon, about male and female partners in the gospel and the gracious gift of life. We'll talk about that soon. And then we're going to continue some in the fall with our Golden Rule series of applications. We're not done. We have several more on that. And then we're probably going to shift into talking about masculinity in a modern world kind of topic for a good season there as well. That's for the ladies. Hello, ladies. You definitely want to cheer for these men, man. You look out there. They need some help. We need some help. And so that's where we're heading. Today, I'm solo because there's been some things, again, itching in the soul, so to speak, related
but there to are no more humans.
Robots, artificial intelligence. What are we doing? What are we doing in this world with these artificial intelligence things? The coming humanoid robot invasion. This has occupied the thoughts of us here on the podcast for some time. In 2017, way back in September 2017, we had a podcast episode called Technology and a Human Future, why we should give primacy to human beings and using technology, including robots and AI, as tools to serve human flourishing and not simply themselves. A year ago, we had episode 165, just about a year ago, called My Guy AI, where we talked about engaging artificial intelligence as an idea and how even that could lead to thoughts about the existence of God, right? And so, but I've had some recent wanderings. I read 6 books this summer on technology manufacturing, the Nvidia Corporation and its founder, Jensen Huang, artificial intelligence, particularly 2 books on OpenAI and its founding and what it's all about. Not good. Some of the stuff on there, guys, not good. So I've been kind of jumping in on that again. I've been playing with learning a little bit more about the neural nets and backprop algorithms and transformer models and some of the actual technology involved with creating these things. And then I ran across a funny example on William Lane Craig's podcast called Reasonable Faith. I'll put the links to this particular episode, 2-part episodes, where basically an atheist YouTuber named Alex O'Connor was interacting with ChatGPT about one of the arguments for God's existence, right? So atheist guy seeing if ChatGPT, GPT meaning generative pre-trained transformer models, these large language models, seeing if ChatGPT believes in God. And this was kind of funny, and it does illustrate something, that these large language models have data which they kind of suck in, right? To use a very rudimentary terminology, they have to be trained on them. So what they're trained on is the information they have access to. And then they put language together based on its geometric relationship, one word to another, what typically follows in this kind of writing. And so if they are trained on arguments for the existence of God, they can regurgitate them quite well. This is a small interaction between the atheist YouTuber Alex O'Connor and your good friend ChatGPT. You can listen to this on that podcast episode from O'Connor on his YouTube, or you can listen to William Lane Craig. I'll put the links in the show notes. He just said this in conclusion. This is an argument for God's existence from contingent things. And just so you guys know, if you don't have a background in philosophy, contingent things are things that don't have to exist, and their existence, their being, depends upon something else. And so you can go back in time. Well, why do I exist? Well, my parents. Why does this shirt exist? Well, there's a factory somewhere and some plants that grow cotton or whatever. Contingent things rely on other things for their existence. Now, you trace that far enough back, you kind of can come to the conclusion that something or someone has to be necessary. In other words, its existence, or God's existence, you might say, doesn't depend on anything else. Or as the medieval philosophers say, they have being in themselves, right? I am that I am, Exodus chapter 3. So this is the argument that Alex O'Connor was engaging with ChatGPT. He started by asking about a microphone. Is this a contingent thing? And he eventually shifts it at the end to the existence of God based upon factual interaction with the robot. O'Connor says this: I want to ask you, and you have been totally honest here, before we had this conversation, did I give you any kind of prompting? Did I tell you I was going to tell you that I was trying to talk about God or philosophy or anything like that? No, you did not give me any prior prompting to let me know what you were planning. O'Connor says, and I only asked you about factual matters, no popular philosophical ideas or things which people tend to believe, just things which are facts. ChatGPT. Exactly. We focus strictly on logical implications, factual reasonings, the premises we agreed on without relying on popular philosophical opinions or beliefs. Alex O'Connor. And that factual trail led us to the conclusion that God exists as a matter of fact. Yes. Well, okay. Thanks, ChatGPT. I guess I'll see you in church. ChatGPT, haha, you're welcome. If you ever want to chat more, you know where to find me. You know, ChatGPT is a little bit of a sycophantic friend, right? Kind of kissing up all the time. I do use ChatGPT. We'll get into some of that later. But anyway, reading all these books on the origins of AI, how it works, and then kind of running across this funny idea that ChatGPT believes in God, probably been trained on data that had good arguments from Contingency, that the people and worldviews which are involved in the creation of artificial intelligence or artificial general intelligence, a thinking machine, their views about life are being expressed many times in these systems. Now, the interesting thing here, guys, is if you look into a company like OpenAI, which was started with Elon Musk money, a guy named Sam Altman, who's the CEO now, was going to be this humanistic, serve the world nonprofit to discover artificial and general, or create artificial and general intelligence first, so we could protect ourselves and be safe. Which basically turned into a big pivot in lots of money and kind of now a tech AI arms race between the Google, the Meta, Facebook, Microsoft, and OpenAI, and others spinoffs like Anthropic with their Claude chat bot. Kind of a nice. Claude is kind of nice. These were found by OpenAI people that left and wanted to have AI safety, make the robots like you so they don't destroy you. So Claude is their ChatGPT equivalent, so to speak, and is very friendly. And you should be friendly to your robots. But anyway, the people and worldviews are interesting because you would be surprised, maybe you wouldn't, at some of the things believed by the scientists and engineers who are after this technology, trying to create it, right? Many of them think it's kind of an evolutionary destiny to become robots. Human beings will kind of get subsumed by our mind children. Transhumanism, that we'll become computerized humans or upload ourselves, or we'll disappear while our robot children populate the stars or the galaxy, right? A lot of them think AI is going to take away everyone's jobs, so that if you don't have work and the robots do all the work, you need universal basic income, which is basically the government giving everybody a chunk of change so you can sit around like a dummy on a entertainment cart, like in the movie Wall-E, or in the positive visions these folks articulate. You can be creative and dance a lot or do art or something, right? But you won't be useful work. Energy use associated with AI is controversial, right? Particularly if you have people who are both environmentalists and trying to create this technology that uses so much power. There's a link I'll put in the show notes from the MIT Technology Review. This is from this May 2025, where it looks at the climate footprint in energy use of artificial intelligence, both in training these large language models and then the execution, the inferences of like when you interact with a chatbot, that computing level. And the amount of energy, y'all, is like shocking. Like cities worth. I mean, you can read this. I'll put it in the footnotes so you can see. But it's massive. And so this creates kind of a conundrum, right, between those who are maybe worried about climate change and those who maybe also want to create these thinking robots. To solve this problem, quite interesting, companies like Meta, Amazon, Microsoft, Google are firing up small nuclear power plants, right? I'll put an article on that about recent deals with these small modular nuclear plants. Even Microsoft, I think it's Microsoft that's restarting 3 Mile Island in Pennsylvania because you just have to power these robots. We simply just don't have the electricity. And so we're going to have to solve that. Well, Sam Altman, one of the founders of OpenAI, just said, well, we'll just create cold nuclear fusion. Just for a background on nuclear physics, right? Nuclear fission is the splitting of an atom and releasing massive amounts of energy. You're familiar with that from history, atomic bombs, nuclear power plants. Cold fusion is the uniting of, or pushing together, as it were, say hydrogen to create helium, atoms, and the massive energy that's given off by fusion. Most physicists, astrophysicists, these are the processes that create energy in the stars, right? Our sun, so to speak. And so, of course, Sam Altman says, well, of course, to create the robots, we'll just create nuclear fusion. Problem is, it's hard. It takes way more energy to do it, right, than it produces. And doing it at scale is just doubtful whether that's going to happen. But no problem. We'll just make fusion to power all the robots. So maybe, if we do create cold fusion, go out and do it. If you're a young scientist, engineer, if you want to create something, create cold fusion reactors, and man, we'll all be happily ever after, a little bit better at least. So I've been thinking about this a lot, looking at what some of the folks who are into this, creating this technology, actually believe. It's a little bit crazy. They are very much scared to death. They're going to create some, Age of Ultron robot, go through the wires and kill everybody, Matrix scenario. So a lot of the fighting in these companies is about how cautious should they be. Of course, everybody wants the glory of creating and controlling the robots. And then you put that in geopolitics, right? Between like, oh, China's going to get it, America's going to have it. And so everybody freaks out. They're both scared, but you got to create it so that we can all have killer drones flying themselves and blowing us up. What are we going to do, right? How are we going to do that? Now, for me, little old me, here in the shed quarters, a lot of those things are beyond me in the sense that those are being created by large companies, lots of money, countries, empires trying to do stuff. But I do think all of us, whether you're using these things or you've sworn it off completely, I have people around my life who are both proponents and users of these large language models and chatbots and such. And I have others who are very concerned about it and almost in a kind of Luddite or anti-technology kind of way, saying things about it, whether informed or uninformed, right? And so I want to encourage everyone who's a listener today, one, be a little more informed. I'm trying to do this podcast, give you a lot of good links in the show notes, some books perhaps to read, to know what these things are, what they are not. For instance, the hardware that runs all these training models and inferences are these massively parallel graphical processing unit, GPUs, made by Nvidia. Theirs are the best. The founder and president of that company thinks, no, these are like toasters. They are a machine, and other people are making them into magical, robots, ghosts in the machine, so to speak. And so you need to know what these things are, what they aren't, what they can do, neither to give them too much credence, right, or too much fear. But also, if you're going to use them, whose bots will you use? Is this a company that you want to give your money to? Are the outcomes of these things ethical, good for human beings, or are they just big selfish moneymaker things, right? That, as we know, history has been replete with. And again, we're not anti making any money here. We're just saying we need to think through these things. And if you're having conversations with those who might be believers in God, maybe those who aren't, and you're maybe talking to one another about AI, you don't want to say ignorant things, and so you want to be as informed as you can. Obviously, none of us can know everything. I'm not going to know what an AI scientist knows about neural networks, but at least we can look at these things from our perspective. Now, if you are a follower of Jesus, we want you to look at this through the lens of human beings in a relationship with God and others, created for purpose, for God's glory on the earth, to do good, right? And to use any technology, whether that's fire, a knife, certain metallurgy, or a computer, right? Or a internal combustion engine or batteries. How do we use these things that are honoring to God, good to other people, the best we can? And so here are a few societal thoughts. Maybe a little bit of advice. Now, look, guys, this podcast will be transcript because the AI for Apple, if you're looking at Apple Podcasts, the transcript would be right there. No problem. You can go back and look at these. We've thought about copying these, put them on our web pages, but they're there for you, and certainly read back over these things. Now, I'm going to do some societal thoughts and maybe a little advice here at the end with some great uses that I've seen of this technology that matches patterns very well, very fast, as computers do well. And then maybe a little advice, some caution or concerns at the end, and then maybe some practical examples of an actual conversation that I had about the use of an AI recently, maybe with my adult kids or college-age kids. So some great uses. Obviously, there's been AI being used in assisting medical diagnosis, like reading X-rays or PET scans and these kinds of things. You know, you have a pattern, this is that. These things can help rapidly sift through lots of data and maybe assist medical diagnoses. Some of you have run across some practical, simple things, right? Like meeting summaries in Zoom, where you can have a Zoom meeting, right, as we do these days. And you can have a bot summarize the meeting, assign action items based on the action items you actually assigned in the meeting. And these things are really good. I've been using these a lot in Zoom when I have coaching calls and such with pastors and things that I kind of mentor. I can send that transcript, say, hey, here's what we talked about if you want to go back and revamp it. Software coding. Writing code is a massive time savers for knowledgeable software engineers. Boosting their productivity tremendously, and then kind of creating a dialogue partner of how to tweak algorithms and maybe make the code more efficient. AI is being very good at that. It's being used now for like customer support. Like say, for instance, you sell, I don't know what some I like. Smokers. You smell like, you sell devices, grills that smoke meat, and you maybe have a customer support representative who's going to answer phone. Now, a real person. I'm not talking you call one of these worthless things where you talk to the robot forever and get nothing, and you have to say, can I please talk to a person 100 times? You know, that frustratingly delightful modern experience. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about you could call someone who is designed to help you through a problem. Hey, my grill won't light, and this is that. And that person could access a large language model that's trained fully on all the specifications and help documents and user manuals of that product. And so it makes it very helpful. In fact, Adam Grant from University of Pennsylvania Business School looked at some studies that are showing that customer support agents that are equipped with this kind of knowledge-based access, where you're not just searching randomly, you're searching into the knowledge that will help you help this person, right? Very helpful that. Research assistance, exploration. If you know a topic and you can use these chatbots as a dialogue partner to aid human thinking, aid human learning. This seems wonderful, learning about basic tasks. I wanted to make sure I had a snake literally on my driveway today. And I was thinking about getting a shovel, right, and getting after the snake. But I think, that looks like a black snake. And I got chipmunk problem at my house. And maybe I want that snake around, doing some work in the back of my house. And so I just took a picture of it, sent it to a pattern recognition engine computer, and said, hey, what kind of snake is this? Well, this is a black rat snake, East Coast. Based on the surroundings, it looks like that. And the markings on the reptile, right? Super helpful in that. And I think learning as a knowledge base about anything uncontroversial, say that specifically, learning about anything uncontroversial seems great, right? Everyone Googles, right? And you Google something, you're just querying the knowledge that's out there from other people. When you're using one of these large language models, you're doing the same. You're learning about something that lots of people have written about, and it pulls it together for you. Now, my caution on this great use of artificial intelligence is that anything philosophical, political, ideological, controversial, even religious, is not simply the discussions out there are not unified in what's true or not true, or what's factual or non-factual. And so we'll get to a little concern on that front here in a moment. But learning about non-controversial topics, anything that you would reliably look to Wikipedia for, you know that, guys. You don't just believe everything on Wikipedia, right? Anything that's like, hey, who discovered, who first worked on nuclear fission, that kind of stuff. You could get some facts there from that. So great uses: customer service, diagnoses, meeting summaries, code assistance, knowledge research assistance, learning, right? Thinking, not shutting down yourself, but using it as a tool in our work and in our lives. Seems to be some really great uses here. Now, there's some general concerns I have. And some of these concerns are quite shocking. And I hopefully maybe would word these as warnings, because some of these concerns I think will have significant long-term consequences rather than near-term experiences. So first is in human relationships. There are many people that are lonely today. Loneliness, particularly in our civilization, is on the rise, right? And some people say, well, we don't have to be lonely anymore. We'll just get like a chat bot, right? That's laudatory, congratulatory, obsequious to us, right? They can simulate human interaction and be nice to us and tell us that we're great and everything we want. Be the best boyfriend or girlfriend you ever have because they don't argue with you or tell you you're wrong, right? In fact, a friend sent a podcast this week how a divorced man was making AI his companion, right? Because he's sad, lonely, going through a hard thing, and he just talks to ChatGPT at night, right? The movie, right? Her with Scarlett Johansson, right? Who's the voice of this chatbot. I think it's Joaquin Phoenix is the actor. Seems to be a future that some people might want. You talk to the computers. You don't have to talk to real people. In fact, so much the founder of OpenAI, Sam Altman, loves that movie. And Scarlett Johansson actually sued OpenAI because they were kind of making a voice that sounded really like hers after she told them no, that she would not voice ChatGPT 4.0. They seem like they got really close to doing it anyway. So human relationships are irreplaceable. In fact, the image of God, part of that is that God made us the way with emotion, intellect, and will to relate to God and others, to do a certain thing that God gave us to do on the earth, mainly to be stewards and vice regents and rulers on the earth, have dominion on it. So this is something that if we start saying we don't need one another, we're denying the way God made us. God made us for relationships with God, right? And other people. Now, you might say, well, what about other minds? What about artificial minds or human-created minds? Yes, we will relate to these robots, but we should not say to the detriment of relating to God and people for which we are made. Loneliness, right, is from aloneness. And talking into the ether to a robot that tells us we're great is not a solution long term. It is a fracturing of our purpose in the world. Second concern is general human learning. Okay, human beings have been made such that we come into the world very fragile and vulnerable. We're dependent on everyone and everything. We have to learn our world. We have to learn about how it works, both the moral universe as well as the physical universe, how to live and survive in it and thrive and do certain things. And human beings have to learn over time to do this. Now, some people would say, well, we don't need to learn anything else that the robot knows. So ChatGPT knows all the facts now, so we don't need to learn facts. Well, in fact, this is a disaster for human flourishing and development. In fact, there was a recent study done by mainly people from the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, MIT, but also MIT's Media Lab, Wellesley College in Massachusetts, right across from MIT, basically, which looked at, this is a paper called Your Brain on ChatGPT, Accumulation of Cognitive Debt When Using AI Assistant for an Essay Writing Task. And basically what they did was we created three groups that were going to write an essay, right? One, this is kind of funny to state it this way, one was allowed to use their brain and Google to write the essay. The other one was allowed to use only their brain, right? Just themselves, write it. And the other one allowed ChatGPT to write their essay for them. And then they actually studied their brains as they did these things. And the results were maybe what you expect, maybe what you don't expect. But those who used their brain and thinking obviously had a more active engagement with the subject matter and what they were talking about. Their mastery of it was better. Their actual physical lighting up of their brain. Neuroscience love to say, oh, it lit up their brain. Your brain doesn't do much on ChatGPT. It's kind of dead, right? And then they had people switch where they had to use a different technique to do it. And the ones that had only used ChatGPT were not as good at writing in the future tasks as those who had to use their brains. And also, this is very important, they also know that the feeling of reward or accomplishment of having done something was tremendous for those who actually did it, and those who did just ChatGPT, phoned home, phoned it in, did not experience that aspect of being a human being. There is a deleterious, a negative effect on thinking, learning, and then ownership of knowledge if you outsource your brain. Okay, human learning. Second was a statement I saw by one of the co-founders of Anthropic, this group that left OpenAI to found another AI company called Anthropic. He was being interviewed, and they asked about how he's educating his kids. Young guy, got young kids, and he said he was going to Montessori school, which is a popular thing for young kids today. Very play and creativity is emphasized. Now, the reason why, though, he said this is like, look, knowing facts isn't going to matter in the future. AI will take care of all the work in knowing the facts. So what is left to human beings? Well, playing and being creative, I guess, is what we do. But is that all we're for? Well, maybe not. Okay. Also, human learning. This is I mentioned a positive use of AI was pattern matching and looking at data related to medicine. Well, just this week, there was a study that came out. There's a link I'll put for medical med page today on a journal of gastroenterology, which was looking at using AI in colonoscopies. If you're of a certain age, you have to start getting these things when you're old. They make sure you're not getting colon cancer, right? And they what they did was that they had people who were, say, 28% accurate on reading these colonoscopies themselves. And then they said, okay, now you're going to have to rely on AI to do it, okay? And the person's skills eventually drop to about 22% accuracy later after having been dependent on just the AI. So this is showing not that AI is not helpful, but to the person's skills, there can be a dulling and erosion of human skills over time if they simply trust the robot, so to speak. And this is very important because there's expertise in using, say, AI that's necessary. I'll give you a simple example. I was trying to research a quote by Dietrich Bonhoeffer, and basically this is called hallucination in AI. It basically made one up. Now, was it Bonhoeffer-esque? Yeah, kind of. Did it sound really persuasive? Yes. I was trying to find, and I asked it for references, and I went to the reference. It wasn't in the book at the place that the reference was. I asked it was this edition. It couldn't find it. And so you got to keep people who know things because sometimes these language models can hallucinate or get things wrong. Now they're getting better, yes. But there seems to be an AI, a colonoscopy technologist. What am I looking for? I'm looking for the word technician. That's what I'm looking for. A technician doing colonoscopies who has good knowledge of identifying what they're seeing could have their own skills eroded by over-reliance on bots. Now, and finally, in human learning, my knowing things and learning matter to God, right? And they should matter to me. Jesus told us to love God with all your heart, soul, and all your mind, and all your strength, everything you are. And he's made us the ability to learn. And that should matter to me because it matters to God. I love one of my teachers in high school, Richard Moulter, who said this: understand and think. Don't just memorize. And so I'm sure he's passed away now, but I'm sure he would say today, understand and think. Don't just use the chatbot, right? We want to value that. So human relationships, we don't want to replace. Human learning is valuable. Human work, doing work. The idea of us just sitting around getting money from the government because the robots do everything and maybe we can be creative and do art. The Bible actually says do something useful with your hands so that you'll have something to share with others. It's in Ephesians 4. Work has its own dignity. We're not trying to get rid of it. We want to do things that are helpful and so we could share with others. And then final concern is with human community and human society. There's just such a massive potential for deception and social control if nobody questions the bots, that because we think we don't know any different and we just trust whatever the man or the man behind the machines or the man training the machines with data, we might be massively deceived and controlled by such technology as this because we only get information from that computer and who knows what's put against that. In fact, AI has no ability to assess or recognize like false media reports or fake news, right? It trusts only what it can train. It is trained on. So now some of the things that are being done, but depending on the company, right? Well, it says trust certain brand authorities of news, right? To say a correct reporting, say like the Associated Press or the New York Times or Reuters or CNN, right? These are trustworthy, or InfoWars, right? These are all trustworthy or reliable sources. Well, whatever you're training your AI with might lead people to believe things that simply aren't true. Now, put this in the hands of authoritarian technocratic governments, say China, or your greatest fears about the American system, whether that's the communists taking over or authoritarian fascism, whatever you fear. There's just a massive potential for deception. Now, we do have a podcast episode called Resisting Disinformation. I think sometime back in these things, Google it, use that Google machine. You can find that because there are some ways we can sort through the data and knowledge that is around us to seek to find what is actually true and what is actually false. So, some concerns. Now, finally, I want to close with, should I use AI or not, or how should I use AI? I think we have to be deliberative here in our ethical discussions with others. And I want to just use an example as we close today, that as we engage with these technologies, we don't want to just be reactionary, nor do we want to just close our mind off and just use it all, right? Just do it. And so an example of a discussion we actually had in our house with myself and two of my college-age kids recently, like last week, was a friend of ours put a picture of his son with his passed away father. My friend's father passed away. His son is in a picture with his dad, right, or his granddad. So it's kid and granddad together, and it's a beautiful picture, man. In fact, this if you do Underground Saints, Craig Malcolm, you'll find an episode on this man who's holding the kid. Unbelievable guy, passed away. Now, my friend took the picture of his dad and his son, and he turned it into a video of them both laughing and interacting together. Is this wrong or is this right? Now, as you think about this, I want to talk a little bit about ethical deliberation. And this is greatly influenced by medieval Christian thinkers, namely Thomas Aquinas and John Duns Scotus, where the ethical evaluation of what we do is very important. And they would separate things into, say things like the internal action of the soul, the external act itself. There are consequences to actions as well. All these things matter. Now, today, most of you, if you went to public school, most of us are drunk today with an ethical philosophy called utilitarianism or consequentialism, which means you don't really know if something is right or wrong until you see what its outcomes are. Does it hurt people or help people? Does it make people happy? Does it not? Is lying wrong? Well, it depends. Does the lie help people? Does the lie make people happy? Does it give them pleasure? Well, then it's not wrong. Utilitarianism is a disastrous concept because you really don't know right or wrong because you're running these societal experiments all the time. Maybe you're trusting with the wisdom of those who've come before you. If you want to, you don't have to. It's not, no one makes you to determine what is right or wrong about something. Well, the medieval Christian thinkers were much deeper than that. They weren't just saying, well, let's just see what the outcome is and we'll know if it was right or wrong. They were saying the action itself matters, right? Does it align with what God would want? The intention, the movement of the soul that moves the life to do something, that matters. Those motives matter. The context we do those in relationship and community matters. And then the meaning of the action has to be evaluated. I say all this because I think with the use of AI, we have to slow down and think this through a bit. So for the example of the grandfather with his grandson being animated, here's the action. A photo was taken and made into a video. The intention by my friend was to remember, to celebrate, maybe probably some sadness of loss, and then joy seeing what it might be like if those two could have persisted in life a little longer and to bring a person back into that event. What is the context? Well, the person making this knows, loves, and has a right to do this, right? It's his photo, it's his family. And so here's the meaning of it, in my opinion. I thought this action was good. I thought it was a beautiful use of artificial intelligence, and it was shared with close friends and family. Delightful. The action, though, creating a video from a photo. Intention, remembering joy and love. Context, families or friends, reflecting on past truth and current longings. Meaning, a good and beautiful thing. Now, let's take a counterexample of use of the same technology. Maybe you create a video of an opponent of yours at work or a political opponent. Somebody makes a video of someone that's not real. It's fake in order to impact an election. The intention, what is the motion of the soul? The intention is to create a false narrative, false testimony against one's neighbor, and to smear another person's reputation and good name. The context of this, the action is done out of selfish ambition and vain conceit. Philippians 2 says do nothing out of that stuff, right? The meaning of this use of the technology was lying, slander, self-exaltations, and sin, all created by a technological tool. Now, I say all this because I want you to think about what we're doing with new technologies, whether that's your sentient robot, or an axe you have to cut wood. And as we look at this very powerful tool that has very, very strong implications for our culture and our society, I want you to be cautious in your use of these technologies. Use them for good. Shun using them for evil. And in summary, I want you to have these things on your mind. First, your relationship with God, your love for God, and love for neighbor. Real relationships matter. To love God with all your mind. Learn. Honor your own dignity by not outsourcing your mind to just chatbots. Third, do your work under God to provide for your family, 1 Timothy 5:8, and having something to share with others, Ephesians 4. Next, live not by lies. Deceptions are real and employed for disastrous accounts in a world of sinners. Be very careful of what you believe and what you see, particularly in digital technology. And then finally, I think most importantly, I want to encourage you to engage in prayerful, patient, deliberative thinking about this new technology and how you use it and whose technology you give your money to buy it. More thoughts on AI sure to come on the podcast, but today that's all I got for you. The Gospel Underground podcast is produced in partnership with the Bonhoeffer House. Review us on iTunes, Spotify, Amazon. 5 stars, please. Acceptable. Drop some sentences in your own brain out to the world to tell us, hey, you should listen to this podcast. Send your comments, feedback, questions you might want us to take up here to info@gospelunderground.org. We are a dialogue taking place in the borderlands between the church and culture, using technology for a human flourishing future to the glory of God. Thanks for tuning in, guys. Peace.